Om. Welcome, everyone, to our all Kula, all community summer gathering. Don't mean to be exclusionary to those of you in Australia, in Brazil, in New Zealand, and other countries in the Southern Hemisphere. But we did call it a summer gathering, but we absolutely welcome each and every one of you in the Southern Hemisphere just as much. It's wonderful to be here with this global community. And I think it would take too long to try to see all the countries and regions represented, but it's certainly more than 40. So folks all over the world, in most of the continents, and it's wonderful to just gather again in this way. I want to welcome you all with all my heart. So there's a mantra we like to sing. Many of you know, but some of you are new. And this mantra is found on almost the first page of Tantra Illuminated. Unfortunately, it's not in the audio book. We meant to put it in the audiobook, but we thought, oh, we'll do it last, and then we forgot. So hopefully we can still add it in some point. But anyway, the mantra is the non-dual invocation to the divine, and it begins Atma Tvam, which means you are my very self. I won't translate the rest, but it's enough to know that. Atma Tvam, you are my very self. It's also addressing the divine, of course. Atma Tvam Girijamati Sahachara Prana Sharirangarham Pujate Vishayopabogarachana Nidra Samadhistiti Sanchara Padayo Pradakshina Vidhi Stotrani Sarvagyera Yadiyat Karma Karomi Tattadakilam Shambhotavaradhanam Jaya Jaya Karunabdhe Shri Mahadeva Shambho Jaya Jaya Karunabdhe Shri Mahadeva Shambho. Just take a moment to breathe a little bit deeper. Let the jaw relax completely. Let the muscles of the face relax. Breathe a little bit deeper and a little bit slower. And then simply become aware of awareness. That power by which you experience anything at all. The power by which you're hearing this voice. The power by which you feel sensations you call body. And then simply notice that your awareness is already vast, expansive. all-encompassing. You don't need to do anything to make it so. Just notice awareness already envelops this entire room you're sitting in, the sky outside, distant sounds. It already envelops the entire field of perception. And notice it permeates everything, encompasses and permeates everything. This is not a concept, I'm just pointing to your direct experience. And can you notice that awareness is somehow something more than just the sum total of your perceptions? Feel it. It's something undefinably more. And then notice this body-mind that you're habitually identified with is actually just a small part of the whole field of awareness. And yet it is a miracle, a mysterious miracle. If you can, let yourself access the natural feeling tone of reverence that is inherent within awareness. And if you can, let yourself feel reverential or loving awareness of the whole of your experience, especially this body. Om. Welcome once again. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to all 145 of you on the live call, and also the people watching the recording. Welcome to you through this extraordinary medium that transcends time and space. We are with you as you watch the recording. Okay, I'm here at Tantrica Institute, Portugal, in the beautiful rolling hills of Leiria district, central Portugal. And I'm in our yoga shala, our sacred hall of yoga. You can see the altar behind me with the three goddesses of the Trika. And you can see illuminated sutras overhead. Chaitanya Matma, awareness is the self. Om, the cosmic yes. And Darshyam Shariram, all that is perceptible is the body. If you realize the meaning of those fully, nothing more to be realized. You can go home. So nice to be here with all of you and to be broadcasting from this beautiful place, which is rapidly more and more as every week goes by feeling like sacred land. And I know that feeling will continue to grow, and some of you will come here and attend a retreat here, and some of you already have. Okay, we have some announcements, some exciting announcements, and then we have a little teaching, and then we have Q&A. So you can prepare any questions you have. You can ask anything you like about anything related to Tantra, non-duality, Shaivism, Tantric yoga, the spiritual path, awakening, liberation, and related topics. Okay, so just priming you for that. It'll be just a little while before we get to the questions, but you can send me your questions if you like, or you can send Florentine your questions. She's our behind-the-scenes facilitator. And speaking of that, I would like to begin this section by introducing our new or partially new Tantrica Institute team. Our team is always changing and growing, and now we have just a wonderful new iteration of our team. Some folks who have been around since the beginning of what we call Tantrica Institute, or that's what it got called, TI, partially because it's the same initials as Tantra Illuminated, right? But it just seemed like a good name to go with. So yeah, I'd like to introduce some of these folks. I will just find them and bring them up one by one because they are on the call. Now there's a lot of people on the call, so it just takes me a second. Here we go. So first I'd like to introduce Kat Whitney. And Kat is our brand new, newly appointed managing director of Tantrica Institute. And Kat has been involved for some time, but her appointment to managing director is new. And she's phenomenally capable and inspired, and she's full of Shakti. And I am overjoyed, in fact, to have a female-bodied person as managing director, bringing the Shakti. It's wonderful. So thank you so much for being here, Kat, and for bringing all your knowledge and wisdom and life experience to supporting our fledgling institute, which is growing all the time. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, so now I'm going to bring up Stuart. Stuart Williams, who's been around since the beginning. He is, well, he serves in so many roles: media manager, online course director and organizer, video editor, videographer, and he served for a while as acting director of Tantrica Institute. So he has been absolutely instrumental, and we're so lucky to have his skills. Um, and it's I was talking with him way back when he was living at a quasi tantric ashram in Mexico, and he decided to come and join us. And like I say, we're very lucky about that. And glad you're still here, Stuart. He's from South Africa originally, um, which is why he has that nice accent that people like. You'll hear in a minute. Um, okay. Then I want to bring in Florentine, who's in Austria, and she is Director of Community Services, another person who's been in multiple roles, but right now we call her Director of Community Services. And she has been also instrumental in helping to manage and facilitate the Facebook group, Tantric Yoga Now, which many of you are in, and you know how absolutely brilliant she's been in helping people find their way in that group. And I really couldn't say enough about Florentine and how brilliant she is. But we don't have all night, so I'll cut myself off. But many of you know her and know how brilliant she is already. Okay, so then I want to bring up Emily Mcpherson, who is a new addition to our team. There she is. She's one of our 2 student services specialists, student services support specialists, a lot of S words. And she's a new addition, as I said, and is already jumping in with great skill and verve and alacrity. And joining her, her partner in crime, or in virtue, I should say, as a spiritual community, is Tara Kimes, who's also a student services support specialist. And the 2 of them are replacing Catherine Bennett, who is still working with us in terms of being part of Matamayura Press, the publishing arm, but is no longer a student support specialist. And that's because she's gone back to grad school. Catherine Bennett, many of you know. And so she was able to give some training to Emily and Tara. So that's part of our team right there. And then we have a couple of team members here as well, who I'll invite up to the magically manifesting blue chair. So David Perkins.
Slide it in.
David Perkins, who's originally from the UK, now lives here, and he is our landscape director and architect and projects manager, and does all kinds of things here on site, getting his hands dirty, but also masterminding he washed them, masterminding the building projects, including this very yogashala that we are sitting in. So thank you, David.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then we also have Rana. Rana Al Said. Did I say it right?
Perfectly right.
Yeah. And Rana's from Ireland, and she's our assistant general manager here at the property, helping to oversee the on-site retreats and all the on-site operations in terms of guest services, hospitality, cooking. She's a brilliant cook, in fact, and we're very lucky to have her on the team. Nice outfit, by the way.
Thank you very much. Inspired by you.
So this is Rena.
Thank you.
Now we have several of our great volunteers on the call as well, but I'll just highlight a couple of them. We've got Grant Ireland, and there he is. He's one of our very faithful, hardworking volunteers, involved in all kinds of media stuff, I'll just say. And then we have Nora. I won't try to pronounce her last name. It's Finnish. And Nora is one of the several people who is helping build our new our revamped LMS, about which you'll hear more in a minute. LMS means Learning Management System, also known as our online learning portal. So Nora is helping with the revamping, remodeling, reconstitution. Thank you so much for doing so. And then, I had some other volunteers here that seem to have disappeared. Oh no, here they are. Carl and Shiva, dynamic duo. Also in Boulder, where Stuart is as well. Yeah, thank you for volunteering and helping with the new revamped online learning portal, and also hosting me when I'm in Boulder very generously. And their owners are a couple of cats named Aji and Pewter, who permit them to live there and permit me to visit. So thanks to the cats as well. And I'm sure we have other volunteers on the call as well, but I think this is actually as many people as we can spotlight. This is as many people as Zoom lets us spotlight. Yeah. So here's some of the faces of Tantrica Institute. And of course, all of you are also Tantrica Institute, insofar as you're involved in our courses and offerings and retreats, and you post in the group. And this is a very active and engaged community, and I'm really overwhelmed with gratitude and delight to be part of this community. And all of you, really all of you, are Tantrica Institute. Okay. So thank you, and please send blessing energy to the team so they can continue to do a great job in supporting you in your sadhana, in your spiritual study and practice. Wonderful. And Florentine has a cute little one that we can see there. That's a way to get the little one to instantly disappear. Okay. Wonderful. So we have lots of thanks and congratulations and things in the chat window. I won't try to read them all out. But yeah, it's really wonderful that we have such a great community that's part of the revival of the teachings of non-dual tantric Shaivism, also known as non-dual Shaiva Tantra, where Shaiva refers to the spiritual tradition of Shiva and Shakti. And it's not a revival in the sense that it ever died out, because it never did die out, but it came rather close, sort of mid 20th century, to dying out. And this tradition of ours, of course, is a sister tradition to that of Tibetan Buddhism, which is also a tantric form of Buddhism, right? And so everyone in the world at this point knows about, the Dalai Lama, and at least, has at least heard of, if not encountered in one way or another, um, some teaching of his, or some teaching from his community. And so it would be wonderful. I think it would be for the benefit of all beings if more and more people hear about this sister tradition of Tantric Shaivism, which does have a global following these days, and lots of great teachers and scholars of this tradition who are active, both academic scholars, like Mark Dishkovsky and others, and spiritual teachers, meditation teachers like Sally Kempton, and many, many more that are helping to revitalize and share the teachings of this wonderful tradition, which has multiple lineages. And as you guys know, I'm primarily based in the Trika lineage, as are the folks I just named, and others as well. So I just want to do a little teaching before we get to the Q&A, because I've just started getting back to writing at long last. Tantrica Institute, the formation and organization of Tantrica Institute, which has taken almost 2 years, has delayed the writing of the books, and there are four books in progress. Near Enemies of the Truth, the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra book, which focuses on the practices of Tantric yoga, and then a book called The Essence of Tantra, which focuses on the teachings or the view of the Tantric tradition, Shaiva Tantra. And so this book, The Essence of Tantra, I've been working on lately, which will contain translations from the great, great master Abhinavagupta. And Abhinavagupta is considered the foremost sort of scholar sage of this tradition of Tantric Shaivism. And so I have translated large sections of his Essence of Tantra and Light on Tantra that'll be published in this book. And so I'm writing my commentary on the translation of his words. So anyway, I just want to share a little piece from that, because someone recently in the Tantric Yoga Now group posted on what is absolute truth. And this is, of course, a very important inquiry. And some people even doubt that such a thing as absolute truth exists. But in this tradition, we say it does exist. It's just that it cannot be explicitly stated in words. Words can be used to point to the absolute truth, but they cannot capture the absolute truth. So if they could, then everybody would know what it is by now. The word would have gotten around. But since absolute truth cannot be captured in words, but only pointed, each tradition points to it differently, or at least a little bit differently. So I would suggest to you that absolute truth, by definition, is that which is true in all times, places, and circumstances. That which is true in all times, places, and circumstances. So I would invite you into this inquiry. What in your direct experience is true in all times, places, and circumstances? From the first person perspective, okay? For this contemplation, don't think of from other people's perspective. Think of from your first person perspective. Every moment of experience that you've had, that you're aware of, what is true? What's the through line? What unites all those moments of experience? Don't jump to an answer too easily. Take some real contemplation. So I'll share with you Abhinavagupta's answer, and of course, I encourage you to continue this contemplation in your own time. Okay, or one of Abhinavagupta's answers, because he says, hey, there's more than one way to point towards absolute truth. Okay, so he says in his Tantrasara, the introduction to his Tantrasara, he says, the insight which most ought to be cultivated is an understanding aligned with reality that is true in all times, places, and circumstances, such as the following. I'll read it in Sanskrit first. Vikalpa sankuchita samvit prakasha rupo hi atma shivaswabhavaha. One's real nature is in truth divine, which means it is the light of consciousness uncontracted by conceptualization. One's real nature is in truth divine, which means it is the light of consciousness uncontracted by conceptualization. So let's unpack it just for a moment. He says one's Atma, you're familiar with the term Atma or Atman, right? Sometimes translated as the self, but it can also just mean one's essence or real nature. He says one's Atma is Shiva Swabhava, has God for its essence, has Shiva for its essence, where the term Shiva here means God in general, the divine in general. It doesn't mean Shiva versus Shakti, right? The term is often used in this way. So one's real nature is in truth divine, or one's self has nothing but God for its essence. Atma Shiva Swabhava. Which means it is Vikalpa Sankuchita Samvit Prakasha, the light of consciousness uncontracted by conceptualization. So there's a powerful teaching here to contemplate, right? Which is that when you get the idea, as many people do, that it's you who become contracted when you worry, yeah, or you think about, what you think about your suffering, or you feel suffering, or you feel this emotion, or have that thought, or get caught up in that story. You're saying, I'm contracted. And this tradition says, no, actually, the mind is a contracted form of consciousness, and it sometimes releases its contraction, and that's very nice to experience, right? But you are not that mind. The mind is an appearance within the consciousness or awareness that you are. Now, you could say that everything that appears within awareness is also what you are, in which case you are that mind, but you're no more the mind than you are the sky, the clouds, the trees, the earth. That's what this tradition teaches. Okay, so just notice this. You habitually identify with the contracted state called the mind. You habitually identify with what it's thinking and feeling, when in fact, that contraction takes place within the great expanse of what you are. Check this in your own experience. This is not a dogma or a doctrine to learn. This is a pointer to the truth, so you need to verify it in direct experience. So what you seek to verify is that even when the mind gets, or the heart mind, we could call it, gets contracted and is like struggling with itself, as it often is, that contraction is taking place within this vast expanse of awareness that you are. And all you have to do when you're experiencing that contracted heart mind is notice there's this great silence all around. There's this great stillness underlying everything. You notice it when you hear distant sounds. The distant sounds highlight the great silent stillness of expanded consciousness. It's always there. It's literally always there, waiting to be noticed. Of course, it's not separate from what you are. It's not like something separate saying, won't you please notice me? So notice how that changes also your experience of the contraction. It somehow makes the contraction a little bit more, shall we say, okay. Maybe it still sucks, but somehow it's okay a little bit more when you notice that this contracted heart mind is an energetic event, right? It's an energetic event happening within this vast openness, this field of awareness. And with practice, you can palpably feel that expansiveness of your own intrinsic awareness, ever present. So this is a powerful pointer. It's only one of many possible pointers to absolute truth. I'll read it again. Vikalpa sankuchita samvit prakasha rupo hi atma shiva swabhava. One's real nature is in truth divine, which means that it is the light of consciousness, uncontracted by conceptualization. It cannot be contracted by conceptualization. And you notice that if you get a break from believing all your thoughts. And it's called the light of consciousness because it illuminates everything. So I could go on and about that, but I'll stop there. This and many, 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 many more teachings like this are on our revamped, remodeled online learning portal, which is going to launch in just a couple weeks, I'm told. Stuart can verify this. So on the online learning portal, some of you know and some of you don't, we have a curriculum called 7 Facets, the 7 Facets of the Tantric Path. It's not at all complete. We're building it, and it's an exciting thing to build. We're building a comprehensive curriculum, a step-by-step curriculum in Tantric studies, which has never existed in the world for this tradition of Shaiva Tantra. So that's wonderful, and we hope that you join us on that, again, thoroughly revamped, remodeled, reconstituted learning portal, which is, you'll hear more about in a moment from Stuart. And we have some exciting new features on that portal that were not there before. So I will let Stuart tell you about those.
Hello. Thanks, Harish. I think the thing Harish mentioned right in the beginning that they're starting to build this beautiful sacred space there on site in Portugal. And what we're trying to do is create the same beautiful sacred space online for all of us who can't get to Portugal for the time being. And we're trying to create a place that we can spend more time together. And so something that we've been wanting to do for a long time, and the previous portal had limitations, certainly on the back end, for us to be able to do what we needed to do. So we've built this entire new system, which is going to be far more fluid and easy for us to use and for you to use, but it'll also have this social component. So this forum component where we can all engage with each other. There'll be forums that you automatically enrolled into when you join a course. So you'll be able to engage in questions with each other about it. You'll be able to speak to each other about your social lives, your practice, your deepest yearnings, your challenges. And we're going to hopefully create a really beautiful online community within the container of that LMS. So that's what we're really looking forward to giving to you in a couple of weeks, as Harish said. And indeed, it's been quite a stressful period getting this all ready together. And I really do want to thank all those volunteers and the rest of the staff that's been involved. I also want to mention Lauren and Michaela, who are on this call, who've contributed enormously as well. But yeah, that's it. I'm really excited and looking forward to hearing back from you once we do launch as to what you think.
Thank you, Stuart, so much. Yeah, a lot's gone into this Tantrica Institute 2.0, and a lot more will go into it. So yeah, we have high standards, and we decided, we wanted to really do something beautiful for you guys and highly functional. And I totally forgot, I wanted to share, and I will share just very briefly without talking about them, the 10 key values. The 10 key values are key principles of Tantrica Institute, as we currently have them, right? There's maybe some little massaging, little alteration that's possible, so that you can know our values as a community. And if any of you feel like, oh, there's something big missing there, then let us know. But we think we've pretty much covered the ground. So these are the first 5 or so. Our values of truth, transparency, Kula as guru, meaning instead of one person being the guru of this community, the whole community is the guru to itself. And we'll explore in another call what we mean by that in more detail. And by the way, I should mention, with all these values, these are the values we're growing into. We don't claim to have perfected them already, not at all. Our 4th value, connection and communication. Our 5th value, inclusivity and diversity. 6th is empathy and compassion. 7th is ethical conduct and accountability. 8th is self-sufficiency and responsibility. 9th is sustainability. 10th is grounded presence. And I think going forward, we might do a satsang on each of these 10. And I'll do a post about them in the Facebook group, so you can review them there. Okay, great. So now we switch to the question and answer part of the call. So somebody wrote a direct message, which might mean they want to be anonymous. And they say, I've finished working through the Foundations course materials recently. And that's our free course, Foundations of Tantric Yoga, which I hope you've all done because it is the foundational course where you really get a strong grounding in the teachings and practices of this tradition. And this person says, one experience I have when I practice being aware of awareness is my sense of awareness being less attached to my body. Sometimes I feel this as a stepping backwards out of my body a little bit. It feels a bit fuzzy, as though awareness is no longer bounded by my body. I worry, though, that this could be dissociation, so I find it hard to relax into. How can I tell the difference and know whether this is helpful or not? Yeah, good question. So the fact is, according to this tradition, awareness is not bound to your body. So it's not surprising that you experience that spontaneously in your meditative practice or awareness cultivation practice. So it's said that awareness is something unborn and undying in some fundamental sense. And the body is an occurrence within awareness, not the other way around, which you can verify in your direct experience. So, like I say, this experience is not surprising, but the key here is, does it have an element of dissociation or not? Well, for people who have a lot of trauma stored in their system, they often will dissociate to some extent. And dissociation is not necessarily bad. In fact, dissociation is a survival strategy that we learn at a crucial moment, often a painful moment of our life. And so we get in the habit of it a bit. But as we realize that now we're in a different context and now we're safe, and now we have tools, and now we have support, and now we have community, and so on, then you can relax out of that dissociation more and more. But please don't view it as something inherently bad, right? But how do you really know the difference? Well, when you dissociate in meditation, at the end of the meditation, you can easily feel quite spaced out and kind of, you might feel floaty, you might feel blissful, but ungrounded, right? And hard to come back to your body. You have to kind of coax yourself back to your body, and you become less aware of your body's needs, for example. You're less aware of its messages, if we want to call them that. So that's one way to know the difference. Another way is that when you dissociate, the contents of consciousness seem very far away. And that's different from non-local, meaning to say, if consciousness realizes that it's not bound to the body, it becomes non-local, it becomes all-pervasive, or rather, you realize that it actually already was and always is all-pervasive. But that's different from this phenomenon of the world becoming very far away, as it were, which happens in dissociation. And I'm not exhausting all the versions of dissociation here. But when you cultivate awareness and you realize it's not bound to the body, you're still intimately present with the whole field of perception. You just don't think you are the body, or you don't perceive that you are the body more than anything else, right? And you can still, of course, return to the habitual perception of being this body, or primarily this body, if you think you need that in order to do stuff. And people generally have this idea that they need to be identified with the body mind in order to get stuff done in the world. Turns out that that's not really true. It just takes some acclimation, and then you can do anything while not being identified with the body mind. It's just a phenomenon unfolding within consciousness, and you can enjoy it and be fascinated by it and experience it without feeling identification, which means without feeling it's me. But of course, be careful of denial of identification. It's not me, which is, again, a sort of cognitive form of dissociation. So there's neither ownership nor denial of ownership in the non-dual state. Okay, so there's neither ownership nor denial of ownership in the non-dual state, which is part of what makes us different from the Vedantic tradition or other traditions where there is denial of ownership. I am not the body, nor is the body mind. I am not the thoughts, and so on. I'm not the emotions. Da da da. And of course, again, we're saying you are that, but no more or less than you are everything else. Right? Quote from Alan Watts, or a paraphrase from Alan Watts's Apropos, where this is one of my favorite quotes from him, where he says, you don't know how to work the organs of your body. You don't know how to work your liver, your pancreas. You don't know how to make a thought. You don't know how the mechanism of breathing happens, and yet you're doing all these things. And in the same way, you don't know how you shine the sun, but you do. That which you are is accomplishing everything. Right? So you are the totality of your experience, not a part, not a subset of it. Okay, so we've got some hands raised to ask some questions. Sandra.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You had asked a question. I didn't realize I'd put my hand up, but I do have a question. I was trying to change my name. I was Rachel Jackson for a while. All right. You had mentioned that when you do asana, you force the Kundalini.
No, I was speaking of Hatha Yoga, and
Yes.
Hatha Yoga should not be identified with asana per se.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that. I didn't realize the clarification. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So classical Hatha Yoga, not necessarily modern Hatha
Okay.
Yoga, but classical Hatha Yoga is a system that seeks to awaken Kundalini and sort of force her upward. It's a forceful system, and there's other applications of the term, but it doesn't mean that asana does that. It's all kind of, it has to do with how you're doing it, right? So if somebody's doing very forceful asana with a lot of forceful bandhas and forceful breath control and trying to discipline and control their body and then make the energy rise, it can work, but it can also sort of backfire, right? For example, people can experience a violent rise, and indeed the word hatha also means violent, a violent rise of the energy. So in Tantric yoga, we don't try to force it. We lovingly invite her, Kundalini Shakti, a form of the goddess, rather than forcing anything. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So we have, anyone can raise their hand, by the way, anyone at all. 158 of you. I'm sure more than 2 people have questions. Don't be shy. You can say anything. No judgment. Okay, Mary.
I'm somebody, so I have a question.
it's about mantra, and I am enrolled in the mantra module, and will look forward to continuing my study on the. I just haven't gotten through the Sanskrit yet, but I guess I'm just wondering what a mantra really is, because I know that in previous sessions here we've talked about how it's beginning to feel like a real being to me, like a real presence that's always there. And but the idea of continually repeating it seems really clumsy in a way, like it's interfering with the relationship with it now, so that I'm kind of exploring the mystery of how to relate to it if I'm constantly feeling its presence. But I was just remembering that we talked about it as like an actual being, and so I'm just kind of in an awkward phase with it, but I hope this is making sense.
Totally. Great question. And of course, there's an awkward phase, just like in any relationship.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I don't want to project my own relationship issues on a mantra,
It's okay. We're gonna have those issues, But yeah, it's forming a relationship, So let me give you some little cues or tips or clues or something. I'll just use the example of the first mantra that I worked with extensively, which is Om Namah Shivaya. And so, for example, there's meditative japa. And that's where you repeat the mantra synchronized with the breath, whatever mantra you've chosen or has chosen you. So, for example, I would repeat Om Namah Shivaya, breathing in. Om Namah Shivaya, breathing out. And the vibe that I'm repeating it with is important, right? So I'm letting the mantra merge with the breath. I'm letting the mantra ride on the breath. I'm letting the mantra and the breath become intimate, as intimate as lovers, you might say. And I'm letting the mantra adopt its soothing tone, this gentle Om Namah Shivaya. But then other times I might do a different kind of japa, where I give voice to whatever emotion I'm feeling with the mantra, So I might go, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, and so on, right? And but I'm sort of summarizing it here, but it's actually an organic process where you're letting it merge and change and letting whatever emotion wants to come through with the mantra. And remember, there's no emotion in this tradition that's profane. There's no negative emotion. We can express any emotion with the mantra, right?
Right.
And then there's singing the mantra. Right. And this is one way in which we explore the textures of this consciousness being that is the mantra, right? So mantras are sort of conscious entities or conscious beings, or sort of like angelic powers once we form that relationship, So maybe if I just sing the mantra in this way, you can just intuit a little bit of the history of my relationship with it and the way it comes through. Om Namah Shivaya. Now, if someone were to say, "Oh, he sings well" or something, they would be missing the point. That is how the mantra comes through, because we have an understanding, we have a relationship, right? It's been developed in thousands of hours. So the mantra teaches you about itself. If you get interested in this relationship and exploring it from every angle, and inviting the mantra to be your ally, to be an energetic force that's alive within you. It takes time. It takes time, just like any relationship, to develop.
Yeah.
So see
It's,
how, yeah.
thank you. It doesn't always have to be vocal though, right? I mean,
No,
it could be.
no, it can be
Yeah.
silent. It can be
Mhm.
silent. It can be a kind of pulsation of energy within you that you're
Mhm.
exploring, right? So like,
Yeah.
yeah, it can be silent, and it can get subtler and subtler and subtler. So my japa, my internal japa or repetition of Om Namah Shivaya can become like, mm, it's like this very subtle
Yeah.
pulsation.
And thank you, because that's exactly what's happening. That's great. And also I find that my connection with it, when I'm trying to block my longing, my spiritual longing, then that's where there's tension in the relationship, because they seem to be intimately connected,
Yeah.
So I really heard that in your singing. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great. So my behind the scenes team tells me that we will add the workshop, The Science of Mantra. This is a 2.5-hour workshop, The Science of Mantra, to the new revamped learning portal. And so that's a great introduction, all in kind of one package. Okay. And also Florentine shared a Facebook post that you can look at if you like. So we have a couple more hands. First, I just want to take Tanya's question. Tanya, do you want to ask it out loud, or do you prefer if I read it? You, please. She says, my sister experiences this. She says she can choose to face the nothingness anytime, but she doesn't want to. She's extremely fearful, so turns away. I say to her that it's consciousness wanting to recognize itself. But I wonder why, when she's so open, why isn't consciousness stronger than ego in that moment? Well, we don't really need to call it ego. We could just say that's not what she's ready to do, and that's okay. Everything happens at the right time. It can't do otherwise. So you could tell her, if you like, this nothingness that she finds frightening, she will discover sooner or later, sometime between now and the death of her body, she'll discover that this nothingness is full of quiet presence. And the quiet presence is exquisitely beautiful. And the quiet presence is her deepest nature. And it seems frightening until you penetrate to that level. But the quiet presence is so quiet and so subtle that at first it just seems like nothingness, that there's a nothingness behind everything. Like a French poet said, God made the universe out of nothing, but the nothingness shows through. But like I say, you go deeper into it and it's full of quiet presence. But nobody needs to see that any sooner than they're ready to. what I also hear in your question, Tanya, is that you would like her to join you on the spiritual path. And so her reticence gets labeled as ego, you know, maybe. So it's fine. Let her take her time, and maybe she comes to it in a different way, you know. Maybe she gets into some different aspect of it and faces the so-called nothingness, or what's better called no thingness, later. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. My old pal, Richard Russell, who's a talented musician of classical Indian music, ragas and so on, which he plays on multiple instruments. He was trained by the great master of classical Indian music, Ali Akbar Khan. So honored to have you with us as always. Maestro.
Well, thank you for this fabulous offering. Can you hear me fine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I wanted to thank Mary for introducing the mantra question, because you know me, I track your mantras, and sometimes I place them to music. And a couple of questions have come to mind. I've been working with the mantra for blessing, which you recently offered, the Sarve Sham one. And just a couple of, first off, technical questions. The first lyrics always use the word bhavatu for everyone. And then when we get to the loka samasta sukhino, it's bhavantu. And
Right.
I'd like to know what differentiation that represents.
Yeah, it's just a grammatical point. It's singular versus plural.
Okay.
So bhavatu means may it be so or let it be. So may there be peace for everyone. May there be liberation for everyone. May there be happiness for everyone, you know. So it's agreeing with the singular. And then loka samasta sukhino bhavantu is in the plural. May all people everywhere be happy. So bhavantu is just the plural form of let it be so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm glad I asked that question, because I'm always looking for the musicality of these words, but sometimes in my lack of knowledge of the semantics, I end up, wrecking things. So
Yeah.
the other question is more in a line with the teachings. And, as you know, I've made this progression from, the darshan of Ali Akbar Khan and studying classical singing and raga structure, and then to kirtan, and now really mostly from your darshan, I've been more introduced to pure mantra. And as a composer and a musician trained in this adjacent tradition, I'm always wanting to, create some music with these mantras and share it. But I was just doing that with this mantra in Rag Bhairavi. And one of the things I wanted to show was, we had this discussion about, raga structures when we were listening to a Shiva chant by your guru on that Siddha Yoga. And I was talking about the specific structures that delineate raga versus a more simplistic chant.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized I was, also kind of pushing my own ego and knowledge of raga to embellish something that maybe doesn't need embellishing. So I rewrote this music 2 or 3 times to make it simpler and more accessible, but still keep the raga. And what a challenge that was, more so than elaborating it. So that was a really fun thing to discover.
Yeah, wonderful. I really appreciate you sharing about the challenge of creating in a way that's sort of relatively free of ego. It's a wonderful challenge to invite ourselves into. Yeah. Cool. And maybe you can, since people have met you now, some who didn't know you, maybe you can do a share of something in the Facebook group, some of your music.
I absolutely will. And as a wild outside possibility, one of my good friends is supposedly getting married in Portugal next year, and he claims that he wants me to play at his wedding. So he said, I
Cool.
said, well, that would be awesome. I know some great people there. And he
Yeah.
said, well, I said, if you get me there, I'll play for free. So maybe we'll see what happens.
Nice. Okay.
All right, thank
Keep
you.
us posted.
All
Yeah,
right.
thank you. So this this enables me to have a little fun cheesy moment because Richard was asking about the word bhavatu, which means let it be, and since I noticed it has 3 syllables, they matched let it be bhavatu. I translated the Beatles song "Let It Be" into Sanskrit. Well, not the whole thing, but some of it. Um, so here's the first verse of "Let It Be" in Sanskrit. It goes like this. Yadatmanam dukkha kale vidye ma durga ma gachati vidya vacham vadan bhavatu. Yeah, bhavatu, 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 bhavatu vidya vacham vadan bhavatu. Okay, thank you for indulging me. Right, so Mother Mary obviously became Ma Durga. Maybe you noticed that. Ma Durga Magachati. Okay, so coming to your question, Bruce, but Jane says, does expressing feelings with mantra help process and release them? I feel like I have a backlog of feelings that are stuck in a swirling mass, more intense than anything I've experienced in this lifetime, even after years of sadhana. Finding it hard to witness and not judge, even though I intellectually understand that it is only the ego that's judging. Yeah, it could be. It could be if you consider this possibility that you even take a few days personal retreat and you speak nothing but the mantra, and you speak all your emotions with the mantra. You let it be a vehicle for expression and release. That could be very powerful for the right person at the right time. It could be life-changing. So feel into that for yourself. And those who want more info on any of these topics, Florentine puts little pointers in the chat window where you can learn more about any of these topics. And Rolf says, I'm interested in the historical development of Shaiva Tantra, Advaita Vedanta, and Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. How did they relate or influence one another? Big topic. A lot has been written on it, a lot of articles published on it, but here's the 30-second capsule summary. Shaiva Tantra absorbed the tradition of Patanjala yoga, meaning Patanjali's yoga. It absorbed all its practices and rejected its dualistic philosophy, its dualistic ontology, right? So the Ashtanga yoga of Patanjali, the Kriya yoga, all of that gets absorbed into Shaiva Tantra completely, just not the philosophy, the dualistic philosophy. And then Vedanta, surprisingly, no real influence, at least not in the first 1,000 years. So Vedanta did not influence Tantric non-dualism or vice versa. There were different streams all the way up until a few hundred years ago. And there's some mutual influence, but mainly the influence is Tantra on Vedanta. Vedanta as taught in India today is thoroughly tantricized. and for the last few hundred years. But if you go back 1,000 years, no, the Tantric masters never mention Vedantins. They never mention Shankaracharya. Modern Hindus are shocked to learn this. They just don't care. They don't mention him, or vice versa. Okay. Gerald says, now we need rap in Sanskrit. Yeah, so Dimitri in Australia is a DJ, and he took some words of mine and mixed them up with like scratching and everything. Let's get more of that, Dimitri. It's gonna be awesome. Okay, Bruce.
So
There we go.
yeah, mine's a philosophical question. It kind of builds a little bit about what you just talked about, Samkhya and Advaita Vedanta. My question is this: non-dual Shaiva Tantra introduced a number of things that were innovations on top of Samkhya, and I think one of them was the 5 acts versus the 3 acts. But you can correct me if I'm wrong. And the 5 acts, the concealing and the revealing, make a lot of sense when I think about it in a human context. But then I was listening to one of your talks, and you're talking about geological history, and I thought about the 6 billion years before humans were around, and I'm trying to understand kind of the conceal and reveal, before humans, or it's hard for me to get my head around Shiva and Shakti waiting 6 billion years to do that.
Well, we can't say that they waited. Well, okay, first of all,
I know that's a
many ways.
Kansuka, so it's time, so it's not meaningful to them, but it is to me
Yeah,
in terms of
yeah,
trying to understand.
and also Shiva and Shakti in the non-dual tradition are not to be construed as persons,
Yeah.
right? Who are kind of hanging out. But having said that, did consciousness wait to manifest embodied vehicles for itself? We have no reason to think that it did, because in fact, Earth is a little bit of a latecomer to the game, meaning to say, astronomers and physicists tell us that there were habitable planets billions of years ago, and billions of years before Earth, there were habitable planets. Our system is a lot younger. And there's no reason, as far as we know, in all the laws of physics and biology, there's no reason to suspect that there haven't already been, millions of inhabited planets in this galaxy alone, and every kind of thing. Just like there was the dinosaurs, here, and they had their day. They had quite a long period, in fact, much more successful than us. But in the same way, every consciousness embodies countless different forms for itself, So, but there was more to your question.
Well, I mean, part of it is, when I read something from a medieval period or earlier, I'm not sure I fully understand, the context of the people writing. So, for example, did Abhinavagupta have a view that, before humans, what did it look like? As an example.
Well, Abhinavagupta was a radical consciousness only guy. So in other words, there's no meaningful, you can't talk about before conscious observers, because there was no before, because consciousness creates the universe of its experience moment to moment, and it creates a universe that has a particular character, meaning to say, when we look into the furthest reaches of the universe, we see things like quasars, which are emitting light from 13.7 billion years ago, and they're the most distant objects, right? So astronomers conclude the universe is therefore 13.7 billion years old. Now, this is a perfectly logical conclusion. It's just not necessarily true, meaning to say, they've measured the light correctly. I'm not saying otherwise. Their observations are perfect. But consciousness has manifested a 13.7 billion year old looking universe.
Mhm.
That doesn't in any way demonstrate that it is that old. We couldn't possibly have any idea if we're practicing this radical skepticism of first person observation. Then we know, okay, the universe that appears to us is a universe that appears with the character or quality of being, of looking 13.7 billion years old. So the universe can appear within consciousness at any time with any character. So, for that matter, we have no idea. The universe could have been created 10 seconds ago. And it could have been created just as it is right now with all the memories in your brain that make it appear as if you've had a life that stretches back way further than 10 seconds. You wouldn't know the difference. And I'm saying something that any physicist or biologist could agree with, in the sense that memories are physical. They're in your brain, physically encoded. So you wouldn't know the difference between a spontaneous creation that includes memories that make it seem as if you've had this life and actually having had this life. So the universe appears within consciousness, and there's no evidence, there's no direct evidence anyway, for the existence of a universe outside of consciousness, right? And they perfectly well understood the apparent logical objections. Oh, but the world was here before humans. It's like, well, nobody can verify that in direct experience. We have a world that when we go and measure the age of rocks and stuff, we get a certain result. That's what's appearing within consciousness, right? So in the consciousness only view, there is no way to establish something separate from consciousness. And we would argue philosophically, not that that matters, but we would argue that those who posit something separate from consciousness are the religious dogmatists in this scenario, because they are asking us to believe on faith that there is something prior to and separate from consciousness that none of us can verify in direct experience. So that's a fun kind of turning the tables thing. The consciousness only view is the radically skeptical view, not the materialist view. We could go on all night, but
Right, I understand.
yeah, we'll talk more next time. Yeah,
I'm still not quite there yet, but I'm working on
that's okay. It takes some time. So did you read the Recognition Sutras?
I've read elements of it. I haven't read it cover to cover
Okay,
yet.
so if you do, you'll get there probably. If anything can get you there, that's what it's designed to do.
My concern basically is I just don't want to feel like I'm elevating humans too much in this whole model of religion and philosophy. That's
No.
That's where I get nervous.
But every conscious creature is an embodiment of the divine.
Right.
I mean, everything is ultimately, but every conscious creature is an embodiment of the power of consciousness, the chitti shakti of the divine.
Right.
So every conscious creature participates in the one divine consciousness. So
what I'm
not just
struggling
human.
with, what does it look like when reveal happens to a rabbit or something, right? I mean, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, look, we don't know. First of all, we don't know what an enlightened. We can't know what an enlightened rabbit is like. But it's perfectly possible. It's perfectly possible that the cat sitting there suddenly becomes aware of itself, of its own catness, aware of itself as a conscious creature. It's perfectly possible, and it wouldn't be able to communicate that to us, right? But each creature is also exemplifying the concealment, because it's God in disguise as a rabbit.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for that. Okay. Fun stuff. Daryush is here somewhere. Yeah, we have a bit of a couples theme as well, right? We had several people watching with their friend or significant other. As I look through, that's cool. There he is. Now, Daryush has an awesome background. Daryush wins for background. He has a portion of the 64 Yogini temple, or maybe it's the 81 Yogini temple. So those of you who are fans of Yoginis, the exquisitely powerful demigoddesses of Tantra, there they are behind Daryush, right? They're blessing him. Very auspicious.
That's 64 yoginis.
Yeah.
Okay. I teach a class, and when I see people privately, this issue of tantric sex keeps coming up, because that's what they know. Even though in my class I make a clear distinction between neo tantra and regular and classical tantra, this question is still in the background. As I'm thinking you will be preparing us to become teachers, I was wonder, I mean, I understand the differences. One of them is about enhancement of sexuality. The other one is about awakening, at least awakening of some form of kundalini toward liberation. I understand the difference, but somehow that's not enough. People need more. And if I don't get them the right information, who knows where they're gonna go? I put Tantra in Amazon, just the word Tantra, there were like 2,500 click shows up. What I guess I'm asking is, would you be teaching us more about the difference? I don't want the techniques. Technique is, you can find it anywhere. That's not the technique, it is not the issue. I was wondering, when you prepare us for it as teachers, would you teach us more about this topic so we can teach it to other people?
Yeah. I mean, briefly, of course, you would say, and you already have said, I'm sure, that Tantra is, there are no teachings in original Tantra that on the maximization of pleasure or sexual pleasure. There are teachings on utilizing pleasure as a vehicle to realization. And for example, in the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, we see that. But it's just, you know, that if you're looking to just have more pleasurable sexual experiences, then you need to look elsewhere, such as to Neo Tantra. That's part of what it's specialized in. But having said that, you know, there's different branches of Tantra, of course, and some emphasize Shiva more, some emphasize Shakti more, and then there's this Kaula tradition, Kaula, that emphasizes Shiva Shakti as a kind of equal pair, as a consort pair, you might say, under the name Kuleshwara and Kuleshwari, usually. Those are just names for Shiva and Shakti, though. Lord and Lady of the family of things. And in this Kaula tradition, they do abundantly use, you know, lovemaking as a kind of metaphor for understanding the nature of reality. And so it can be nice sometimes when people are asking about this to hit them with, you know, this whole teaching around, according to the Kaula branch of the Tantric tradition, there only is lovemaking. Everything is lovemaking. Everything is consciousness and energy in ecstatic union all the time. And awakening is or can be awakening to that truth, where, I mean, where you see it everywhere and in everything. You see the rain inseminating the earth, you know, you see everything, even your breath entering your body is a form of penetration that brings ecstasy, right? Just to breathe deeply and fully is joyous, you know? So everything is the lovemaking of consciousness and energy. And it reflects and instantiates in every possible form. So by mentioning that teaching, we help kind of elevate it to something well beyond, you know, the questioner's personal prurient curiosity. But we can talk more about it another time. Thank you, Daryush. I'm going to wrap it up soon. Jackie says, is there any connection between Taoism and Tantra? Yes. Yes, not early Taoism, right? Not the Taoism of Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi, but medieval Taoism is definitely connected with Tantra. These communities were in conversation by that point, right? Tibet had absorbed Tantric Buddhism and exported it as well to points further east. Taoism was, penetrating further west and southwest from its origin points in China. Plenty of overlap, yes, in medieval Tantra and medieval Taoism. So yeah, it's not just, there is historical connection. It's not just people independently discovering the same thing. There's other connections that are more tenuous, but are also very interesting, such as the possible connection of Tantra to Neoplatonism, right? So that's the mystical tradition of people like Plotinus and Dionysius the Areopagite and others, right? So this late Hellenistic mystical tradition, some of you have never heard of, it is astonishingly beautiful, powerful, well articulated. So look up a bit about Plotinus if you want. Now, there's some possibility that some of these Neoplatonic ideas got exported east to India and helped seed Tantra and some of the Gnostic ideas of the late Hellenistic period as well could have helped seed the origin of Tantra, which in some respects was called 1500 years ago, was called within India an apurva, an unprecedented new teaching. Some elements, of course, are not unprecedented, but adopted and adapted from Vedic religion, but many elements of Tantra were unprecedented, and perhaps they independently originated, or perhaps there's some influence from the West. Now, of course, just so you know, any modern Hindu will absolutely deny any influence coming from outside India because it's part of their religious dogma. So maybe not any, but almost everyone. So don't get into an argument with modern Hindus about this. They cannot countenance the idea that anything in India came from outside India. But it did, including the astrological system originally came from the Greeks, but it was much improved by the Indians, let me say, massively improved into Jyotish, and even the days of the week in India came from the West. That's why we have the same days of the week in Spanish, French, and Sanskrit, and so on. Not English, though. That system got messed up, right? Anyway. Any other questions? Are there tantric yoga practices to assist those dealing with chronic illness that leaves the body severely fatigued and in an uncomfortable home to be in? Well, I mean, yes and no. And the reason I say the no part is because I want you to explore every possible modality, right? And avail yourself of whatever modality is going to be helpful. And there's so many forms of brilliant body work, and acupuncture and acupressure and reflexology and physical therapy and Thai yoga massage and endless things, any of which, I mean, it's so worth exploring all this stuff. Cranial sacral, because you never know when you'll hit upon the thing that just does it for your body. Bodies are unique and amazing and weird things, and you just keep kind of trying different stuff. You might hit on something that really makes a huge difference for your particular body. Having said that, we have meditations in which we seek to become present to the whole of our experience. Because what happens if you have a body that's in pain or uncomfortable is that you get focused on it. The faculty of attention gets narrowed onto the body. Remember, consciousness remains expansive and open, but the faculty of attention gets narrowed onto the body. And it needs a little coaxing, right? So we have practices to allow the faculty of attention, which is a function of manas in the Indian system, to expand out to the full, or at least closer to the full scope of awareness. So if you're successful at that, you know, the body still has its pain, but it isn't as impactful on your experience. Your experience is distinctly different, and not limited to the pain of the body. So it's really worth doing the mind training here, because if you do the mind training, you can experience pain very differently. This is what allows the Tibetan Buddhist monks who were tortured by the Chinese to endure their torture, right? And there's the famous story of the monk who was in Chinese prison who was released by the Chinese because he was bad for other prisoners' morale, meaning to say he inspired the other prisoners. They would shove bamboo sticks under his fingernails. That was one of the tortures. And he famously, when they came to his cell for yet another session, just smiled and held out his hands. Right? Now, this is possible through a mastery of these meditations in which you throw the faculty of attention all the way wide open to the whole sphere of consciousness, and you're not fixated on that which happens to be most salient in your experience, or sort of loudest in your experience. But it takes years and years of practice to be able to pull it off in those extreme circumstances, which hopefully none of us will ever have to be in. But you never know whether your dying process is going to be painful or not. So some training in this is in general a good idea. Kurt Kruger had his hand up. I don't know what happened there.
I still have it up, so to speak. I'd love to be able to have Florentine's young man come on and share his experience of what he got to be able to hear and participate in. I feel that that closeness to the heart and essence that a youth of what seems to be his age could render for us in clarity.
Okay, so I'm not sure what you're referring to. Maybe I didn't keep up with the chat window here.
Florentine's son was sitting next to her for a while. He happened to have long hair, and somebody thought he might have been a young lady instead. But he's seems like a very clear soul to me, and I'd love to be able to have his impression, if it's possible. If he's still around, I'm not sure if he is, Florentine.
Oh, so you'd like him to share?
Yes.
Florentine, what do you think about that?
Hi, Kurt. Nice to see you. I'm afraid it's not possible. He's asleep. It says it's way past his bedtime, and I actually sent him off to bed like an hour ago. And the other aspect is that he doesn't speak English. So
What language is it?
But I was kind of translating what Harish was talking about, and it's interesting that you see that him as being like a clear soul, because that's how I've always seen him. And I asked him I told him, he asked me what is this Harish person talking about, and what are we doing here? And I told him, we're trying to find out the truth. And then he said, I asked him, what does he think the self is? And he was like, well, it's obvious, it's everything. I thought that was really interesting to have that little conversation with him, actually.
Beautiful
to open that up, because we as adults oftentimes think we're so freaking smart because we've studied this, that, and the other thing, and yet that closeness to God and the essence and the feel. It's like how many of us walk up the street in a where you can see nature, and actually experience a hummingbird telling you, hey, be like me. I've been put here for a reason. Follow your reason. You get this information from a hummingbird. It just communicates with you because you're open to it. And kids do that more readily because they haven't been shut down by the left brain education system.
Everyone loves that supposedly true story of the, 6-year-old girl who asked her newborn baby brother, can you tell me what God feels like? Because I'm starting to forget. Yeah. And I'll take a moment to introduce Kurt here, also known as Narayan Kruger, who, just by coincidence, I was going through old papers and I surfaced his little book published in the 70s called Japan Hijack, which is his account of how the power of the mantra, if I remember rightly, how the power of the mantra saw him through a harrowing experience of being on a plane that was hijacked.
Well, the interesting thing about the mantra, I tried using Om Namah Shivaya because I was able to at one time finally, sit down, and I drank some of Baba's bath water, and which got me into a different state. But I also tried doing Om Namah Shivaya with the mala, and it was going Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Oh shit. It wasn't working. So I took out the Swadhyaya Sutta, the chanting book, and I started to repeat the Guru Gita. I did it like 7 times over about a 4-hour time period. And that I got into the most profound state of meditation I'd ever been in. Here, these guys have automatic weapons, hand grenades, and plastic explosives, but that's a siddha, and that's the power of the mantra. That's the power of a long one like the Guru Gita, but it's good.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here.
It's good to be here. I'm telling you, I'm just so blessed to be with this Kula.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And you can see, oops, wrong hand. There, you can see your guy up there. Wonderful. Yeah. For those who want to read it, maybe Kurt can share that little book, that little story.
Somebody
Really
emails
amazing.
me, I'll send off whatever I can. It may not be that one because I'm not sure if I have it in print form.
Right. I have it as a photocopy.
Yeah.
I have all that.
That's how I have it, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so now we have more questions that have come in. I don't think I've really kept up, but that's okay. Miho and Yasmin, whichever one of them asked this question, who are in Brazil, I believe, say, what is your perception of the validity of the I am not the body, I am not the mind teaching coming from the Vedantic path? I'm struggling to see why it's so commonly used by spiritual teachers coming from that tradition. It seems unnecessary. Well, it actually is necessary for a lot of people. They're so identified with the body mind that we sometimes need to use this heuristic, right? A heuristic is something that's not exactly true, but it leads you towards truth. So we teach, you're not your emotions, you're not your body, so they can shift into a wider consciousness perspective, and then later can realize, oh no, actually, consciousness manifests the contents, the contents of consciousness, including this body mind, and this is what I am, and so is everything else, right? But it's, the tantric scholar Alexa Sanderson said the unique strategy of Tantra, as opposed to these other paths, is transcendence followed by pervasion, where you transcend your typical body identification or mind identification, but then you uniquely to Tantra, you seek to experience that the transcendent pervades that which it appears to transcend. But there has to be a kind of step-by-step process here. You can't jump to the end, So you experience the transcendent, then you seek to perceive that the transcendent actually pervades the transcended, and is the substance of it. So it's not that's why you can't sort of think your way to enlightenment, right? Because you have to go through the process. Okay, so then we have Nora often has great jokes. When I said everything in the universe is lovemaking, and she says, well, so are the painful parts BDSM? The paraphrase there, but anyway. Kelly. Maybe this is the last one, you guys. Kelly says, when I was 12, I had a powerful dream about what I thought was a demon. In the dream, I had a crush on a man who then turned into a black demon with a red mouth, who screamed at me repeatedly to die. I realized I was dreaming and willed myself to wake up, at which point the demon followed me into my room and kept screaming at me to die from the corner of my bedroom. It's always scary when dream creatures follow you into the waking state. When I was fine, it can happen, but don't freak out. It can happen. When I was finally able to make a sound, it disappeared. This dream was so traumatizing for me, I had to get therapy about it in my 30s. After years of spiritual seeking and research, at some point I saw a huge parallel between the demon in my dream and the Hindu goddess Kali. My question, what role do dreams have in the Tantric tradition of awakening? They have a divination role, typically. So the teacher, especially if you're in a process like a retreat or an initiatory process, the teacher asks about your dreams and then gives you feedback, because in this kind of divination process or augury, they're not what you might expect, like certain forms of violence or, death or the threat of death can be very auspicious. It can be a sign of the impending death of the ego self or the person that you think you are, right? Which is the death of a mental construct, but it feels so real, that it can seem like death. So it depends on the person. It depends on their practice, depends on the dream. But they are often used in this way, So like a dream of a snake is considered a auspicious sign of Kundalini, and so on and so forth. So a lot of what's scary, though, not always, but a lot of what's scary can actually be auspicious. We have, we have scary goddesses in our tradition who are goddesses. They're not demons, right? They're goddesses. They're wrathful forms of the divine, because they provoke experiences of intensity in which we could potentially realize our essence nature. Okay. Oh, people are starting to drop off, so it's time to wrap it up. Kaushalya asks about what's depression according to the tradition. We'll have to talk about this another time, but it's a paralysis of energy, usually due to believing a story which is so deep it's mostly subconscious. So you need to work to uncover the story that's getting believed, work to unbelieve it, and then the paralysis of energy ceases. So for this, of course, I recommend ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, or other forms of cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's the short answer. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all for being here. How wonderful to join with the wider community here. So let me remove spotlight so we can go to gallery view. You can click on view gallery so you can see each other. So many beautiful souls. And we'll sing a few lines of something or other here. Perhaps Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho, where again Shiva can just be a name for the divine in general. Right? Somebody could type the words there. Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho, Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho. Everyone. Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho, Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho.
Oh,
Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho, Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho. Love and blessings. Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho, Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho. Mahadeva Shambho, Mahadeva Shambho. Everyone, Mahadeva Shambho, Mahadeva Shambho. Mahadeva Shambho, Mahadeva Shambho, Mahadeva Shambho, Mahadeva Shambho. Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho, 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 Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho. Mahadeva Shambho, Mahadeva Shambho, Mahadeva Shambho, Mahadeva Shambho. Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho, Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho. Everyone. Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho, Jaya Jaya Shiva Shambho. Imagine golden particles of light showering down on every single member of this community and every single loved one of every single member of this community. May all these beings be blessed, meaning to say, may all these beings realize how blessed they truly are. May all these beings be free, realize their freedom. Sarvesham Muktir Bhavatu. May all these beings be happy and full. Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu. Loka samasta sukino bhavantu. All together. Loka samasta sukino bhavantu. Wonderful to be with you all. Please join us on Tantrica online anytime, or when we launch the revamped portal in 2 weeks. Hope to see you there. We'll have our own version of Facebook on there. Time to divest from the rapacious corporate entities and have our own place. Om.
Sadhgurunath Maharaj Ki Jai.
Hey. Thank you all. Many, many blessings. Much love. Be well. And always keep the connection. As the electronic connection drops, feel the subtle energetic connection. Om.